What's going on, YouTube? We're back with another Wonderkid video. We're down to our last three here. Today's episode is on left wingers slash attacking mids on the left side. Some of these guys play both left and right. We are down to our last three in the series. I know it's kind of been spread out a lot, but it takes a lot to go through these series. So we still have right wings left and we have strikers. Today we're going to look at 38 on the left wing, and it is sorted by their rare price from highest to lowest. It's going by recent price. The market is in flux, so these guys might have a floor that's less. So as you can see, the second player there is definitely less. So we're starting with Bino Gittins for Dortmund. So I was kind of surprised to see he was the most expensive on the list, coming in at just under $1,000 for his card. If we take a look at here, he is a super sub. He has pretty much come on every single time, and even in the Champions League win, the last 11 minutes he played. And you know, for that price, he has starts in the past, but I just can't really. He has a lot of skill. He's 18 years old, so that's a lot of it going into it. 18, playing for Dortmund. There's options, and you're going to score really high if you're at Dortmund. It's just Bundesliga scores a lot. He looks very skilled. The upside is definitely there. I just can't in this market. I just can't spend that much. But he is coming in number one on the list based on price. This isn't the way I would rank it. Number two is Durami from Ajax, but he's on loan at Copenhagen. And as he moved to Copenhagen, he has become pretty solid. You can see here 81, 88, 79, but that is whenever he does score goals. He does have some nice AA though, so I will say he's putting up decent scores, and then that little extra bonus whenever he scores makes it over the top. So as you can see here, he wasn't playing at Ajax, but whenever he did move, he is the starter, but he's starting to play up top instead of that left mid position, so he's more of a striker playing for Copenhagen. But as you can see, great move on loan, but it's kind of a little scary with his price, 0.34, but he was trending at around 0.55. And once that loan is over, is he going to crack that Ajax lineup? That is something to be seen. And this Superliga season is kind of coming down to an end. But it is important to remember, they don't just have 5 games left. They are broken up into the top half and the bottom half. So there is more games to be played in that. So don't think that there's only 5 games left in that season. Next up, we have an American side, but the Argentinian, Alan Velasco. So I'm very high on this kid. I do own a rare of his for this season. I can't wait to use it. His going rate is around $750. Floor price at 0.59. I spent more than that whenever I did some buying, maybe like a month and a half ago. So prices have come down, of course. You look at his L5, 73, 63. And of the guys that we've had so far, his scores are unbelievable. He's on free kicks for FC Dallas. He is an AA monster at times, and he does get decisives. MLS, a lot of goals are scored, so he's putting up those nice green scores, especially at the end of the year. He really rounded into some form. It's not that he was bad early off in the season, but he just was kind of a little bit inconsistent and kind of finding his own. Could he move upcoming? Absolutely. He's only 20 years old. He is a super talent that I'm really hoping sticks out the rest of the FC Dallas season and doesn't move over to a European side in the near future. Do I think he can make it though? Yeah, he has under 23 eligibility until 2027, and depending on the move, I think he's ready if he puts in another MLS season. Next up, we have for Porto, Gabriel Veron. His price is a little bit higher because he only has 5 rares. So he is 20 years old. He only has 5 rares on the platform. And as you can see here, he has not played since starting and then bench out of the lineup. So this is a risky one, a lot of subs. And he did come over from Palmeiras before that, where he was getting into some nice form whenever he was in the starting lineup. So one to watch for sure. I can't really say that he'd be a great pickup right now, just because once that supply goes up, his price will go down as far as on the market. So one to watch, but not one that I'll get into. Next one, we're going to go back to the MLS. And another guy that I own, Talis Magno. So New York City, I would say like 2 weeks ago, the prospects of their season was kind of low, but they've made some additions and they're kind of getting back to a team that I think is going to be really solid. They're not going to be the top team, Philadelphia, maybe Cincinnati, maybe a dark horse like Orlando, New York Red Bulls, another dark horse, are all good teams. But New York City should hold their own. I think they'll be fighting for a playoff spot. But Talis Magno, he's going to be solid. So he's not going to play on the left wing. He's going to play at striker this year, which I think his scores are a little bit better whenever he's on the wing. Whenever Tati Castellanos was with him, it just seemed like he would have a little bit better scores. You can see over this stretch, he was just unbelievable last year at times. And I do think he has the upside to put up these ridiculous scores. He's going to score goals, especially if he's in that striking role. Whenever they were in poor form, not scoring goals, he just didn't have good games whatsoever. But you can see he has goal and assists, and he has the upside to put up a 100 score, albeit he hasn't. But 93, 85, 90, you see all those good scores. And then he has that boomer bust ability, which you want in your lineup. You want guys that can really have that upside, and he'll be in the MLS for another year, and he's only 20 years old. So another guy that I'm really looking forward to. Next up, we have an 18-year-old Pinyev from Lokomotiv Moscow, and his price, his floor price, don't pay attention to that. His price is going about 0.34. He only has 11 cards. As you know, Russian Premier League is not minting cards. Sorare is not minting their cards, so that's why he hasn't come out here. He does start for Sovetov, and he has been in pretty good form. You can see here he is scoring, he is assisting, and he's having those nice upside games. Just looking at his AA, he has some nice AA games as well, and he is definitely one to watch. It's just a little bit tricky because the market isn't, especially for limited. There's only 99 limiteds as well, so it's tough to get there. And then Russian league players, they're on that huge break. They will be back shortly, game week 351, but it's kind of a little bit tricky with those type of players. I'm an Arsene Zakarian holder, so I know about that wait. It seems like it's been forever since they played. Next up is a guy who has kind of been disappointing, is Ansu Fati, and you look at his price, it has dipped. So I want to look at his graph just because, you know, it always is terrible to see. I don't want to highlight to see who this was. So he did go for auction for 3.4 ETH, and that was July 14th. So, man, it's been a ridiculous fall, and it's just been, you know, up, and way down. So we take a look at him on Barcelona. He's been a sub. Whenever he has started, he just hasn't put up scores. I mean, look at all these low scores. He's had a couple good games, but as far as, here's why I listed him. He has so much talent. Is he maybe a better real-life player than a Sorare player? Maybe, which he hasn't even proved that. But I do think he is super talented. And as far as his, you know, is his upside going to be reached, he's still only 20 years old. I know it's kind of crazy. He's still playing for Barcelona. He's getting some burn. He seems like a super sub at the moment. But he was part of the Spain team in the World Cup. It's not like he's completely fallen off. On Sorare, you got to stay away. You just don't love to see it. But I do want to include him because he is very talented. A lot of these guys in this list are just huge talents. So that's kind of what I wanted to put through. And if you believe in him, 0.29 for a guy that was going for like 3.5 ETH is not the worst. Kind of, I'm going to buy as low as absolutely possible, but he could keep going down. Next one is a guy who I think has a ton of upside. He's playing in the second division for Las Palmas, and that is Molero, and he is a stud. So if you play second division, and I don't, but I have been watching lately, he is on an absolute roll, an assist machine. He hasn't played 90 minutes barely at all. I mean, here and here, but he's getting it done in less time. And even when he doesn't have that assist, look at these AA games, 15, 24, 16 with a yellow, all 50 plus. And if you look before that, you know, he wasn't in a great run of form. It seems like he is really just kind of, he's settled in, he's in a great run of form. It's not like he hasn't done it before, though. If we look further back, he has had upside games, but it seems like the consistency is coming together, which is really nice to see. And he's only 19 years old. So depending where he will be next season will be very interesting. And I think he is one of the bigger talents on this list. And if you're a football manager guy, I love getting him in football manager, and I think he has so much upside. We take a look at his price. 0.28 is not the worst. If you play second division, he's a guy that you can just plug into your lineup. I know he has a midfield card, so interesting for sure. And there are, I was kind of actually looking at this, there was an auction that is just starting, so maybe we'll see where that settles in. Will it be by that 0.28 with the market in the way it is, or will it be closer to that 0.3 plus? Next up is for Rennes, Jeremy Doku, and he is around the same price, and he actually had a little bit of a spike here, and as you can see, that is because back-to-back nice games in losses, which 3-1 and 2-1 loss. 65.7 here, 30.7 AA, and a 90 pointer in the midweek fixture, which is unbelievable. And especially where that's come from, he was just a sub and not scoring well whatsoever. That's why he spiked up. Going back all the way, he hasn't done this really at all. He's kind of been a disappointment, but I think he is rounding into, and especially if he can round into some form with these, if you want to play capped, he has a super low 31 L15. You can kind of fit whoever you want with a nice 31 in there. He's still only 20 years old, so I think he is kind of rounding into some nice form. I know it's only 2 matches, so maybe not get too excited about it, but they were both in losses, and especially as a midfield card, that's pretty impressive. Next up is Mario Stroikens, and he is at Anderlecht. I was an owner of his card. I gave it away. And you take a look at his price. It's been pretty stable. That rare is only 0.12. Not the worst thing in the world, but if you just take a look, he was very frustrating as far as like playing him. But as you can see here, he did have a goal and an assist here. It's just his AA hasn't been very steady. In that goal game against Sorare, which great matchup, 22.5. He does start, and then he doesn't start. With these midweek fixtures, you got to really watch. At the time of recording, I feel like my lineups are just going to get busted with some rotation, things like that, with Champions League, Europa, and Conference League coming back. But he had 2 goals back here as a sub. Other than that, it was kind of ho-hum scores, which you couldn't really start. But I think he does have the talent, as an 18-year-old especially, with 2029 eligibility on under 23. A lot of talent and just needs a little bit more time to get there. Now, a guy that moved from Rennes to Southampton. I watched the Southampton game last week, and I was very impressed with this guy, Sulemana. And in that game, I watched the Wolves game. He only put up a 41.3, and he was all over the field, though. Just kind of as a scouting look at him, he just played in the World Cup as a sub, but I was impressed. I'm not going to lie, especially getting into the lineup right away. Here's where I was kind of confused whenever I was going back through and trying to find people. He had 2 nice games here. He started, and he played all right against Fenerbahce. 29 minutes as a sub, out, sub. And he just didn't really land in the lineup. I was kind of surprised to see him start already whenever he got to Southampton, and especially at striker, center/right striker. Interesting. So this is kind of my thinking on this. I do think Southampton has a decent chance of, I don't know. Maybe I'll come back to that later. I do think Southampton needs to have some work. I like Ward-Prowse here a lot, especially just his free kicks. It's unbelievable how good he is. And they just got Onuachu as well from Genk. Alcaraz has been nice. So, their players, I kind of am rooting for them. No real affiliation with them. I don't love them, but I kind of like how their team's forming. And, I hate to say that for some reason, but whatever. Next guy is Gio Reyna, an American. He's frustrating as far as managers go because he is a super sub. He has started. He started against Werder Bremen, 66 minutes. But if you look at here, as a sub, he came off and scored the winner in both of these matches against Mainz and Augsburg whenever he came off the bench. But he just isn't finding a starting role. in the kind of crowded Dortmund. I think he has a ton of talent. He was on the bench, didn't play against Chelsea. It's just he is injury prone. He does have upside games, but is he going to see more than like 66 minutes in a match? I just need to see him play 90, and at his price of 0.25, I don't know. I would like to see him starting, and then his price will go up if that is the case. He gets into the lineup, but I'm just going to kind of wait on him. I like him a lot in real life, but just got to wait for him in Sorare. Next guy, let's go to Argentina, Boca Juniors, Zeballos. So rupture of his outer meniscus, so out until March 25th. So that's a little over a month from time of recording. So this is kind of, if his price dies down, he is a super talent. It's just he hasn't really shown it as far as breaking into the lineup. And then, he came on as a sub. Some high scores way back here. But other than that, it's been ho-hum. He is a super talent, though. I wanted to mix in some Argentina players, and, we have some MLS players instead of just Europe. So it's a bummer that he got hurt, and he's 20, so he does still have time. I do think once he gets healthy, he's a guy to watch, especially for 0.24. If that price comes down with the injury, people kind of sell out on him. Might not be the worst thing in the world to pick up a cheap player. I do want to look at his price graph. I know this video is probably going to be long, but I do remember where he was just absolutely going off as far as prices. Look at this just insane spike. That's just unbelievable to me. It's almost 2 ETH. And now, just in that short time, he dropped so far. I mean, crazy. 0.8, and then it just down to 0.3 because he stopped playing again. And that's just, this stretch right here was where that price was, and he was in unbelievable form, everything. It's just, he's very frustrating, but one, if you want to kind of push someone aside and hold on to. Pedro Fight for Vancouver. He should be in a starting role this year, full time. I know they do have a decent amount of options, but if you take a look at his last 5 games last year, he did move into a starting lineup, and he did play very well. I do have him playing as a right striker as far as for this team. Ryan Gauld puts in a lot of great balls. He'll get a ton of assists, and if Veit can score, he'll be a very viable option at the under 23 summer. So very interesting. I did have a limited way back here, and he was starting, and then it was just back to the bench, and he got hurt. And it's just a process. Some of these guys aren't ready right away, and I do think he's a pretty large talent in a team that is interesting. Getting a new goalkeeper. Hassal is maybe the number 2 or maybe the number 3 now as an owner. Boy, that was a terrible investment, but that thing happens. Go back to Velez in Argentina and Prestiani. So his price is around 0.22, none on the market right now. So if we are going to load, he hasn't played much. He's been on the bench, which he wasn't even in the squad before, but he has been on the bench. 17-minute sub right there. It's just kind of, he's waiting to break into this team. Velez has been good. He's 17 years old. So he is very talented. That 2030 is kind of crazy as far as the eligibility. So will this game even be around by then? I really hope so, but it's kind of crazy that we're looking that far out with him. If he's a guy that we saw the graph for Zeballos. If he gets into the lineup and he starts like 4 games in a row and he like does half decent, that price is going to skyrocket like that other one did. So one to watch, just another guy that I think has a lot of talent and is going to be on a lot of teams' radars. Diego Moreira, so we're going to go with an 18-year-old from Benfica. His price is around 0.15. There's only 9 cards of him, so very interesting here. He hasn't been in the squad or anything at all. If he gets a loan move or somewhere else, or if he breaks into the Benfica team eventually, he'll be very interesting. But on scouts' radars, he is a guy that has a lot of talent. Next up, Maldini for Spezia in Serie A. He is very cheap. So if we take a look at him, I do think he has some talent left in the tank. It's just he hasn't really broken into the squad. He has been a sub. He scored against Milan. But as far as Sorare, he's just not a guy that is going to knock your socks off, isn't going to be a guy that does super upside things, especially if he's not starting. But here's why I included him. He's only 0.04. So that price, he is under 23 until 2026. It can only go up from here, in my opinion. If we take a look at his price graph, he does have a 110. There hasn't been like any, let's see, there we go. You do see he is trending at almost 0.25. You know, he was at Milan, came down to Spezia. So if you think there's something still in the tank, take a look at the last sale, 0.09. So I know prices have dropped like crazy, but 0.04 is not bad whatsoever. So that's why I included them. I think that's a value option for sure. If you have a little bit of ETH laying around, might not be the worst. And then maybe even relist it right away to see if someone will bite for a quick flip. All right, Stevanovic for on loan at Santa Clara. So another guy that his price is 0.13, but just kind of looking at his limited price, $3 for his limited. So even at Santa Clara, he's not getting the game time that I really would have thought. Earlier in the year, we kind of looked at that and negative AA, but he did have an assist. And Hreemveen, he is on loan from there. I think he's talented. He's 20 years old. It's just he hasn't broken through. And I would have thought at Santa Clara maybe he would get a little bit more opportunities playing in the Portuguese league. But he hasn't yet. Just one to watch. I wouldn't pay that price in any world, but, you know, to each his own. Next one, Bradley Barcola for Lyon. So Lyon has Turkey. He's been on a roll. It's been great to see. Barcola has gotten some game time as well during this span. So he has played the striker and the left mid position. He had an assist here in the 2-0 win. He had a goal here in the 3-1 win. So he is getting on the score sheet. He is putting up a little bit of AA, but not a ton. But 10 and 12 in about 60 minutes, not bad at all. And if you take a look at his recent run of form, he started a little bit before. So it is good to see that he is getting some consistency, especially in those 4 straight starts, and then a sub appearance here. So one to watch for sure for Lyon. Next one, Stipe Biuk for LAFC. So he did just move from Hajduk Split. And if you take a look at his scores there, they weren't great, to be honest. He is a talented kid. He does need a decisive, or, you know, sometimes he does put up some nice AAs. But as far as LAFC, my opinion is that he is a backup for this team at left wing. I think the top 3 can be kind of interchanged on LAFC. I think he will be an off-the-bench guy, but they will be in multiple competitions, so there might be some rotation. He will get starts throughout the season, and, you know, maybe playing in the MLS for a very good squad. Whenever he does get his starts, he might put up some nice scores. So right now, 0.15 is where he's trending. It seems a little expensive for a sub. That's all I'll kind of say on that one. Next one, Jolson Fernandez. So he's 19 years old. He is playing in Liga 3 for the second Sporting CP squad. 0 limiteds and 53 rares. So nothing really to see here. As far as, so Basel originally there. He did play, though, for Basel as a sub. Couple starts, but I do think he is talented. He's only 19 years old, so he's kind of bouncing around a little bit. If he can join that Sporting Lisbon top team, eventually could be worth something. I think he's talented. He's just very raw. Next one, Luca Oyen. So for Genk, he did have a ligament rupture, which, you know, is obviously terrible. But look at his prices. If they drop down even more, could be interesting as far as that. So as you can see here, he was trading up at that 0.48, 0.5, which, you know, he could see that again. It's just he's been out for a really long time. So Genk Genk is one of my favorite teams to watch. I just watched them draw with Mechelen today. Hanen with the late header to equalize. I really like playing or watching them because I own Vandevort and he never keeps clean sheets, it seems like. So it's ultimately very frustrating, but I really love seeing them play. Trezor, Paintstill, all of them. So he was part of the starting lineup, and I do think he will be part of the starting lineup whenever he gets back for a team that is really good. Obviously, they're really good. So 19 years old, and it's just kind of a waiting game whenever he's back. It's going to be a while still. So I wouldn't sink that ETH into it, but one that he has a lot of talent. Next up, Rukavina for Zagreb. You look at that, $13 and then $167. And it's just a guy that you're kind of waiting for. So what was interesting to me is after the break, he has been on the bench. New little integration into that. He was on the bench one time, I think. Yeah, only one time before that. So he is going to get his first appearance here soon. He's 19 years old. He is a young talent coming through. So once he does get some opportunities here, it'll be interesting to see if he can crack the starting lineup eventually. Maybe at the end of the season, they might give him some run. And if he does kind of build on this upside, if he gets into that squad, be a great player. We're going to go to Norwich City. So a guy that's kind of been around. I didn't realize he was only 21. So this is a list of 21 and under players, and he is at the top of that range. Christos Tizolis, and just not the best scores that you can see. So he was at Twente, and he moved over to Norwich City. He has been on the bench and out of the squad for once, and his scores are horrific, to say the least. So he can score goals, though. If you're looking for a guy that can score goals, he is interesting. I just can't pay his prices, and he's kind of getting up to that. I know 21 isn't old, but he's kind of getting up to that point where if he can kind of turn around for Norwich a little bit here, will be interesting. Pretty decent run of form here, possibly at Millwall's tough, but a guy that I think has a little bit more upside in him. Coming down the last stretch, I think we have like 10 left. I know I spent a little bit more time than I wanted to on this, but just kind of going through here. Luis Henrique for Botafogo in Brazil. So he is in that Marseille kit. Pretty cheap entry, very cheap entry there. But if we take here, he's just a sub as far as, I mean, that was back in November. So just a sub for Botafogo, and he started a couple games. But other than that, he is talented. He is 21, so on the upper kind of, you don't want to wait for a 21-year-old as much as if he was 19, that'd be one thing. But one to watch for me, at least. And another one in the Marseille kit, Conrad de la Fuente. Very disappointing for a U.S. player. I think he has a lot of talent, but he did move to Olympiacos. And, you know, that's obviously terrible and not covered, which is just doubly horrible. So in the, were they in Europa, I believe? He was out of the squad for even those. So he's had absolutely no utility. I can't say to buy him. I did have a limited before, and it was just kind of frustrating. He wanted to move to make the World Cup, and then, you know, that didn't even happen. 21 years old, talented player. It's just, is he going to waste? He might be. Univar. So he's at Trabzonspor. As far as he has that upside, it's just, is he going to get the option? So he had an assist here in just limited minutes. He just doesn't get the minutes. Hence why his price is kind of where it's at, but it still seems high. I do think he is very talented. He is only 19 years old, and he is one for the future for sure. Definitely one to watch, and I'm interested to see how he does moving forward. Let's go to Gangwon in the K-League. So Yang Hyun Jun, hopefully I didn't botch that too much, on the cheaper-ish side. If we take a look here, he does start. So in the K-League, J-League, both of those, you want players that start and don't just kill your lineup. The amount of DNPs that I get in Asia whenever I had my Asian team were just frustrating. So him playing, and then this is kind of the stretch I was looking at. He had some really upside games and was crushing it earlier in the season. But it's kind of, he gets in a really good run of form. You got to ride him during that run of form, and then he kind of goes to, if he doesn't score, he's not going to put up nice points. What do we got? Negative 15 here. So pretty brutal if he doesn't score. It is kind of that he's got to score, he doesn't put up points. But one in Asia that is kind of a summer guy that might not be the worst investment in the world at 0.08, but he is a midfielder card. It'd be a lot better if he was a forward card. Adingra for Union SG, he is on loan there. So some really upside scores here. So another guy that has a ton of upside, but is he going to start? It basically comes down to that. You want a guy that's going to be consistent. Look at this run of form. He was absolutely unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. And then a red card. And then the form just went to crap. He played in a wingback role, but mainly a left mid. He's trying to work himself back into the starting lineup after being out. And it's just kind of, you can't start him, but he has that upside. Look at all these green scores. And for a guy that, yeah, I would pay that 0.08-ish, but not the 0.15 where it's kind of at right now. His limit is about $20. It's just kind of, he's shown the upside. It's just, I wish he started every game. Kaminsky for Wolfsburg. I'm going to move through these guys, last guys, pretty quick because we're hitting the 30-minute mark. Appreciate if you're still with me. I know it's long-winded. So he does play for Wolfsburg, and he does start for Wolfsburg. He played in the World Cup for Poland, started 2 matches and 2 subs. So a lot of yellow scores, upside whenever he scores or assists. But the AA, it just kind of depends. 60 minutes against Bayern, he had 20 AA, a great 80 score there. It's just kind of, he can hit his upside games, but it's just kind of, you don't know what you're going to get. He does start a decent amount of games. Definitely worth a look at least, especially for 0.006, $10 on that price. Next up for Sociedad, Baranexia, and he is a guy that's about the same price here, and he has just gotten into that. He's played right back, which kind of surprised me because I had him pegged as like a left winger or a striker. He started at right back the last 2 matches, and he put up 18 AA in the last matchup in which they conceded 2 goals. So that was interesting to me, and especially with him getting into the squad after not really playing much at all. He's one to watch, and he has just gotten onto my radar, so I wanted to include him here. Next guy who's probably a little bit more known if you play draft for La Liga is Abde, and he is on loan at Osasuna. And he started, but his scores have been pretty horrific. He was part of the Moroccan team. He was a sub multiple times at the World Cup, and it's kind of went up. It's went up from there. He had some form before there. He had an assist there, an assist in his first match, but he is a Barcelona player on loan there. So very interesting, and I do think the run of form will get a lot better, especially it can't get worse coming off a red card. Next up, Navarro, Sociedad. Low scores, a couple upside games, same kind of thing, but he's a sub. Price is pretty cheap, but 20 years old, talented, just kind of not a guy you can start right now. Let's go to Mexico. I want to put a Mexican league. 18-year-old Herberto Jurado, and he is $6, and I would never pay that. But if you look at like 0.04, that's not the worst thing in the world. He does play. It's just he started the first 2. He got a yellow, and then he was on the bench for Necaxa. And the scores aren't great. He's going to need a decisive pretty much. Sometimes he had some nice AA, especially this game, but then he followed that up with a negative 10 AA. So if you're looking for a youngster in Mexico, he's an 18-year-old that starts. And I do think that price is going to go up. It already has as far as the floor, but from his recent, especially that limited, I think there is some room for growth for there. Nico Serrano for Mirandes in the second league in La Liga. Disappointing. He just kind of sub and then out of the squad. Not a lot to say there. Whenever he was in the lineup, he was putting up decent scores, a nice 21 AA there. As a sub, he came on, had an assist. So the talent's there. It's just he hasn't really shown it yet. Last 3. Faride Alidu for Frankfurt. So a guy that's very cheap, and you can see why. He has been a sub, and that is about it. And he hasn't even been in the squad the last 2 matches. So, kind of a guy that you might want to hold on to. But at these prices, I do think he's talented. He's 21. I'd rather have a younger player. So, while I can't condone this, he's worth a look at the limited price. Some of these guys are definitely worth a look. Enzo Malot, so 20-year-old for Stuttgart, staying in the Bundesliga. Very cheap, $2 on his price. He has been out of the squad after being on the bench, so that's kind of disappointing, especially whenever he did get a start against Leverkusen, sub, and then just out of the squad. So he was starting, so I'm not really sure what happened to kind of get him out of the squad, but whenever I put this list together, he just kind of had to be on it, in my opinion. And the last one, we're going to go with another Mexican League player who moved to Sporting Gijon. And he was at Santos Laguna, and he was scoring off the bench. And he was in the MLS All-Star game where they played kind of a couple youngsters, and he was included in that squad. I think he has a lot of talent, but is it going to translate into Sorare scores? He at least is playing for a little bit there whenever because I was tracking him, I was an owner of him earlier. He was just on the bench and not playing, so it is good to see he is playing. I would like to see him start and get more minutes, but that's a wrap. So hopefully you guys liked that video. I know they are a little bit long, but I do kind of just want to say a little bit of a blurb on every single player. If you liked it, please just like it. And if you have any other suggestions for left wingers, or if they play other positions, definitely leave in the comments. So thanks, and see you for the next one.